So I'm going to read from my notebook here some thoughts I had on considering the phenomenon of life and human beings, considering it as a phenomenon. Um, as best I can tell, in the most ungenerous, conservative scientific view, where all concept of I is an illusion, and there is simultaneously no I for the illusion to be played on, and we work purely mechanistically in a computational fashion. If I take that seriously, then what we are is not really necessarily an effect or a consequence of matter, just by using hard definitions there. Um, but that makes us something more like a phenomenon um, that is not even a real existing consequence of matter and energy, but something identifiable only as an interpretation of it. Um, or let's say an interpretation interpreting itself. So, in this example of us being a phenomenon, which if there is simultaneously no I, nor is there an I for the illusion of I to be played on, um, then what we are is not a cloud, but like an image you might see in it. We're a crossing point between causation and consequence, and creation and experience there. We're the exact crossing point where nothing exists. We're at zero. So we're not the cloud, but we're like an image you might interpret in a cloud. Um, we are the conceptualization of this space, not the space itself, uh, even in subject, let alone time and space. So we are closer to the idea of subject itself, where I am not the I am the. Purely the intent behind the I. Um, so that's in the most ungenerous scientific view. Well, I might have worded it a bit flowery there. It's if we are nothing, if our consciousness is purely illusion, then that's something like what we are. Um, but I believe that this view can still leave a lot of epistemological richness for us. For starters, the nature of the entire universe runs through you, and you are a negative space through which causation, whether it's deterministic or otherwise, must pass to complete creation. You're an intrinsic part of the universe there. You're something it needs to sustain itself because you're just a consequence of it there. So you do not exist with the physical, but you are intrinsic to the physical, like math, or image, or potential energy. None of these things are real in let's say the most physical Newtonian sense there, but they're all phenomenon that exist like intrinsically within reality. Uh, so in this sense, you don't really lack purpose. You are purpose. And as such, you have purpose whether you like it or not. That view of us, of our consciousness being an illusion, is often taken as so grim, but really, if you consider the consequences of what it would mean if we're pure illusion, um, there's some interesting fallout there. Um, so this gives you at least one mission as far as purpose goes, and that's to discover and decide. In the same way the end of everything pointlessness question is answered simply by yes and, uh, this leaves the choice, and it is a choice between be nothing or be nothing and search. Whether or not you're nothing there, you have a choice with what to do with your so-called nothingness. So, but immediately, this first requires a re-embodiment metaphysically. Um, we must, if we're going to consider ourselves a mere image, as that image, we're going to have to re-engage with and take ownership and responsibility uh, for a now willful inhabiting of physical space in our minds as subjects. And at the same time, cause or create this through physical practice that trains and controls consciousness of the physical body. So in that sense, we must come to re-inhabit ourselves and re-inhabit the world around us. This is what I think would need to happen if we're going to hold this interpretation of consciousness into the future. I'm not saying that we will, and it's not the one I particularly agree with there. I've said before that I think consciousness is somehow tied to time, because I don't see how we can be pattern without there being some very crazy, trippy fallout from that. That's not to completely dismiss that trippy fallout either. But I think if we're going to go into the future deciding that we're an illusion, we're going to have to decide what to do with that there. Because if the default opinion is going to be that, well, I'm purely an illusion played on myself and there is no self, I'm something like the image in the cloud. I'm neither physical nor even conceptually there. That we're going to have to figure out what to do with this, and we're going to have to take responsibility of that, because that's going to make the idea of us being detached from ourselves, from our actions, from our responsibilities, from the world around us as the default, intrinsic to our zeitgeist. That's going to be the automatic mode of thinking there. And so we're going to have to get past that, because that's simply, you can't build anything on that there. And we can still hold that, I think, as our core belief as a larger society, but still get past that there, because I think there are plenty of practices that make you inhabit your own body and make you inhabit the world around you and be conscious of that there. And practices like all martial arts, yoga, sports, even just meditation, things like that are all practices that bring you back into yourself, let's say. So if you accept that you're something that is simply an intrinsic phenomenon within the universe there, then I think it leaves it up to you what you're going to build on top of that there. How in control of yourself are you going to be? I mean, that's kind of the Stoic notion there. Of course, the Stoic notion is built on a whole other system there, but I think we can kind of get back to that idea of responsibility for ourselves there, and true connection to the world around us there. But now the difference is that now we have to do it consciously. We have to consciously take up that as an act and say, there's things I want to do with my time here, whatever it means. But to do those things, I'm going to actually have to be connected in a way that is, beyond my pure philosophical, scientific ability of thinking. And so we're going to have to practice things that we might not necessarily believe in, but not practice in them as a lie. Practice in them as, when you go to the gym, you don't go to the gym because you believe that you're healthy or the fitness that you want to be. You go there because you're trying to achieve something there. You're trying to work towards that, even if that ideal self is impossible. And so in the same way, I think it's not a betrayal of self or a cognitive trick to say, listen, even though I know that uh, this existing as more than an illusion or phenomenon is possible or is impossible, um, I am still going to work towards that because it's the consequences of that are going to have benefits for what I want to do here with my time on this earth. And the whole epistemology of where we get the rest of that is, a much bigger, much deeper question there. Um, but I think that's somewhere where I think a lot of people are going to have to start. It's not necessarily something I buy into, but it seems to be quite a common idea or thought or consideration of what we consider ourselves. Um, and the people who are born into that or who come to that just by consequence, because I don't believe belief is a choice there. You believe what you believe, and you can be convinced otherwise or not. But if you can't, you can't. Um, but I think there's a lot out there. There's a big epistemology that can be built on top of that. It's not as grim, I think, as its detractors often make it out to be. But not only its detractors, the people who put forward this notion that we are nothing but illusion, quite often I find sell it as we're nothing, um, but there's always the yes and right. There's always, okay, fine, where do we go from here? And those were just a couple thoughts I had on where you might go from there if that's where you are.